So the next obvious question is the difference between functional testing and non-functional testing. So imagine this way. Functional testing is everything you do in a software application. You click a button, it you enter some data, you save the value, you retrieve the value. Like imagine Amazon again, you go to there, you log in, your login is stored in somewhere, and then it gives you a login ID, and then you go to the checkout page or the search page, you search something, and you select something, you add it to the checkout, you add it to your cart, and then the cart information stored somewhere, so that when you log out, the cart is still saved, and then you go log in back again, and you buy that stuff, and you go to checkout page, you make sure the prices are all calculated properly, and then you pay the amount. Your payment is connected with your bank, you're connected with your card. So these are all functionalities, right? So anything you are able to do, anything an user able to do in a software, that focuses on the functionality testing. Then non-functional testing, it's more like what you feel about this. So if you go to Amazon, it looks like you don't able to find where the search button is, where the checkout is, where the cart is. You feel you hate it when you cannot find a field when you're searching for, right? So that is, we would call it as more like usability testing. How it is usable for a consumer. For example, the same thing works better in let's say laptop, and then it's not working in mobile. That is compatibility issue. So usability, compatibility, then you click add to cart, and it's keep on circling, keep on loading for 3 seconds or 4 seconds. That is performance. So these kind of what you feel without, between interactions, between actions, between functions, what you feel, how it looks like. It's like if you go to Amazon, and if you go to Flipkart, and if you go to some other sales website, you see each of them have its own functional problems, and then non-functional problems, performance issues, capability issues, compatibility with your different devices. Something works in Android, does not work in iOS. Both working in mobile applications will not work in mobile browser, but mobile browser works, but desktop browser doesn't work. So this kind of, all these, the consumer's feeling is tied with non-functional testing. So how do we test it? It has different variations. In general, in the older times, we used to test with actual devices. We have like at least 2 or 3 mobile, 2 or 3 Android devices, 2 or 3 iOS devices, and we compare our categories to see is it working in all devices, in all permutations. And then we got like Browser Stack and Sauce Labs kind of things, which allows us to do this compatibility testing in a cloud. Similar thing happened for performance as well. So in performance, the reason for why it is loading, right? The reason for why it is loading for a long time is because from the action perspective, it's very simple. A user clicks a button, and that information sends to a server via HTTPS protocol, like from the database protocols, and then it stores that information into the database. When multiple people access the same time, access the endpoint, or access the server and database at the same time, the server itself, by design, it has these options of pooling, what we call it as pooling. It's more like waiting for one transaction to complete, so that next transaction can happen after the first transaction is completed. So these kind of systems, these kind of functionalities are inbuilt with the server side code or database code, which makes the user's life much harder, that it's loading for a long time. So this is what we test with simulating these actions. What if hundreds of people accessing the server at the same time? What if hundreds of people accessing the database at the same time. So this is how we simulate the user actions and figure out it works. That same is true for functional testing as well. When button click, it should work, but it doesn't work and it goes to a wrong page, or it's not successfully adding the information to the checkout data table. So these are all the things, or functional or non-functional. How we test is pretty much straightforward, that we simulate these actions. How do we simulate? It slightly differs. Sometimes you do it manually. If it is a functional testing, you can do it manually, that okay, you can go there and click a button and go to navigate to the checkout page, and as a human interaction you can figure it out what are the problems. And usability testing, it cannot be that easy to automate these situations, so we kind of do an exploratory testing to figure out is the application looks better. But for the performance testing, it's very hard to simulate the situation by you cannot simulate hundreds of users using hundreds of actual users. So the only way to do that is write a code to simulate the situation. So the code will be like having multiple threads and accessing the server at the same time, accessing the database at the same time. What are the things we validate is differ from application to application, especially for functionality. We pretty much, most of the time, we call it as atomic test. We can talk it in the next call. We will be discussing that, and we will be checking that functionality test in simple validations of, okay, is it going to the correct navigation page, if the navigated page have the correct information. So those kind of very straightforward validations. But when we are doing non-functional form, especially if performance or load testing, we cannot do it that level of straightforward, because one of the requests might be taking too much time because of our local machine problems or the code problems and stuff. So we will be finding it out, specific averages, calculations and stuff. What is the 99 percentile, which means where our 99% of endpoints goes to. So those kind of validations we will be doing on top of this specific validation, that how many errors are happening when there is hundreds of requests at the same time. So this is pretty much a short information about functional and non-functional. We can discuss about more in next forthcoming videos.